I don't necessarily want to change the Warhammer community, and the way I think of it is like I'm just building my own over here. You can come over if you want. It's more inclusive over here.
Hello, Dana Howl.
Hello.
Welcome to, this is episode 6 of my show, which is called Role Diversity. And thank you so much for coming on today.
My pleasure.
If people don't know who you are, do you want to just introduce yourself?
Absolutely. My name is Dana Howl. I run a YouTube channel of the same name, and it's about painting miniatures, I guess. That's it's sort of about Warhammer, but more about the painting aspect.
Yeah, your channel is one of the best in the world, and one of the bigger hobby YouTube channels, isn't it? It's and it's one of the most, well, it is the inspiration for why I have a YouTube channel. Your channel wouldn't exist if you didn't have a YouTube channel.
I'm a big fan of your YouTube channel also.
Today we're going to be talking about diversity, inclusion, sort of general hobby stuff as well. The focus of this series is on exploring the hobby experiences and lives, I guess, of people who aren't in the traditional majority demographic of nerd hobbies like miniature wargaming. So that's anyone who isn't sort of a straight white man. Not that we don't think those perspectives are valuable, but it is always worth, I think, forwarding perspectives that aren't, in them necessarily the majority. My first question for you then, Dana, is how did you get into the hobby of sort of miniature gaming and painting? What kind of things do you like to play or paint or do?
So I'll try to give you a short version, but if you want the long version, viewer, you can go and check out my YouTube channel, and there's a video about Dungeons and Dragons. And that's how I talk about in detail how I got into the hobby, and it was through Dungeons and Dragons. So when I was younger, I got into miniatures. I painted miniatures because I wanted miniatures to use for 3rd edition Dungeons & Dragons, which was really miniatures heavy. So that's when I found out about miniatures, and that's when I started painting miniatures. I was already into a lot of like arts and crafts type stuff, so it wasn't a huge leap for me to get into miniatures. But I actually wasn't. I didn't get into the wargaming aspect, which is more what I guess my channel is about, until 2019. I did miniature painting up until about college, and then I got back into it as an adult, as sort of a way to relieve stress at the end of the day.
I think a lot of people, myself included, did the same thing. I did the exact same thing. Did it as a kid, drop, come back to it as an adult, and as a way to sort of relieve stress, I guess. I think I started when I was at university. Yeah, that's great. So when you came back in 2019, was the catalyst for that, I need something to relieve my stress, or was there another? Actually,
I probably got back in more closer to 25th. Actually, I went in heavy. Like I went in really strong. Like it became my obsession in 2019. Actually, I got back into it probably closer to 2015 with Imperial Assault and Sorastro's guides on how to paint that board game. So if you're not familiar with Imperial Assault, it's sort of a dungeon crawler in the Star Wars universe. It's a really great game. And Sorastro, another YouTuber, made a guide on how to paint all of the miniatures. And that was when I got back into painting miniatures, because I was really into that game and I wanted to paint those miniatures. So my trajectory was painting for Imperial Assault, and then Star Wars Legion came out, and I started painting. Actually, I have my Star Wars Legion stuff right here. I started painting stuff for Star Wars Legion, and because I was doing a Star Wars podcast at the time, I was very into Star Wars. And from there, I finally got into Warhammer. I dipped my toes into Warhammer, and I started painting those Nighthaunt, which I think a lot of people know me for. That kind of blew up on social media, and I liked the attention, so I kept painting those. And that's kind of how I got into YouTube as well.
Yeah, I think that the Nighthaunt was the first time I saw your miniatures. I think so. I think it must have
That's probably true. That's what most people, yeah.
And then you did if I'm remembering correctly, you did a YouTube video for those Nighthorn, and was that
Yes.
that was the first video?
So my first video was on underpainting, like
Yes.
sketch style painting. And the reason that I made those, so I was mostly just posting my stuff on Twitter because I was enjoying the community. I was specifically enjoying the Hobby Streak community, which was like, for people who don't know what Hobby Streak is, it's you paint for at least 30 minutes a day and you post your progress and you see how many days in a row you can go without breaking your streak. So I was posting hobby streak stuff and that was my main interest. But because I was posting those pictures every day, people had a lot of questions on how I got those results. So I got sick of posting my stuff on, I got sick of typing out the answers. I was like, I have camera equipment. Why don't I just make a YouTube video to explain all the common questions. So I did one on underpainting, I did one on glazing, and then my third one I think was on the night haunt, which combined those first two. So those were my first 3 videos, I think.
Yeah.
And that
sort of went from there, right? Like you were already pretty big after those.
Yeah, I got a lot of people sharing those around, and it got really popular for some reason.
Because they're great
Thank you.
content, and the style for me, I think the style was, the painting is great and it's amazing, but the style of like the editing and the little jokes and the VCR stuff and all of that is what made it unique for me, I think. And I think probably for a lot of people, the style sells it and you do really well. Did you already know how to do things like filming, editing?
So I come from an animation background, so editing programs, stuff like that has been pretty familiar to me. The camera stuff, not so much. I had to sort of self-teach myself those things. So I've really just been learning as I go, mostly using YouTube videos to teach myself how to do this type of stuff.
Yeah. I've been the same. I've really enjoyed it, actually, like learning how to do editing, learning how to do various bits of camera trickery and stuff. I'm enjoying. I can never remember the name of the channel, but there's a guy who does like Premiere Pro editing tutorials that I follow and he does really good stuff for like transitions and how to do little glitches and things like that, and I love putting that kind of stuff in. And yeah, you just, from then, have you been doing YouTube full time from then, or is it?
No. So I was, up until that point, I was still freelancing in animation and getting increasingly sick of that industry. I don't want to go into details here, but I basically took on less and less freelance work. And as the YouTube revenue got bigger, and then around, when did the pandemic start? I basically went full time right when we all went into lockdown because it made
March 2020-ish.
Yeah. So I've been doing it for 2 years. Yeah, that's when I went full time. Was when people asked me to make a Patreon, and people started throwing money at me on Patreon, and I was painting custom figures for people, and so I was supplementing the YouTube income with Patreon commission work. And then eventually I didn't have time to do the commission work because I was all tied up with YouTube. And so, I've been a full-time YouTuber for 2 years.
I think it's so cool that people are able to do this as like a full-time job with Patreon and stuff.
Yeah, I still don't understand how it happened, but somehow it is working.
I wanted to see how long I've been a patron of yours.
Yeah, I don't remember when we first met. I think it was after you made your first video. I immediately liked it and commented on it.
Yeah,
and that's how I knew who you were.
That first video was just copying as much as I could find of your. Like I was like, I will use the purple lights. I will use the like VCR style thing. I was like, you know what? Screw it. It's my favorite YouTube channel. I'm just gonna do the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, I did the same thing too, right? I was copying other people as well. I don't remember who it was at the time, but I was definitely taking from other. I mean, I still do that. We all just copy each other.
I don't think it's, I don't think I was ripping you off, and I don't think that it's a
No,
problem,
absolutely not.
but it was definitely inspired by.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that's, so to my knowledge, it's just me and Lila. Lila Mev. I think it's just in terms of like women on YouTube who are doing miniature stuff. Who have like above
Yeah,
50,000
yeah.
subscribers.
I couldn't see anyone else. There's a few people who do it like in conjunction with a partner. Things
Yes,
like
yeah, yeah.
Broadsword War Gaming, Hellstorm War Gaming. Georgie is involved.
Snipe and Web, I
Snipe
guess.
and Whip, yeah. And then there are
Um,
more people off YouTube on things like
but
Instagram and stuff. Yeah.
but in terms of pure like painting, unless you want to count people who do more like dioramas and stuff, because like Kathy Millett's been around for a long time. Shout out to Kathy Millett. If you like big dioramas and more modeling type stuff,
Okay.
go and check her out.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think
she's really good.
yeah, I think you're
Yeah.
right when you say it's you and
Me and
Lila.
Lila. And we get confused for each other, even though we don't look alike. So Lila was telling me that at Adepticon this year, that people kept coming up to her and saying like, "Oh, I really love your speed paints video," and she was like I've never done a speed paints. Apparently, it happened multiple times, which I'm not sure why. Like we don't have the same haircut. We're both white women on YouTube.
Are you from the same country?
We're not even from the
I
same
think she's
country.
American.
She's American. But yeah, that kind of tells you everything you need to know.
Yeah.
We get confused.
There's only two, and they get confused for each other.
Yeah, it's tricky. I found when I first started, one of the reasons one of the reasons I had two reasons for starting to make YouTube videos. One was to just answer those questions people kept asking me. And two was that I was like, hey, there are no women on YouTube doing this. So I bet if I did it, I could probably do well because like get in early. I assume 5 years from now, there's going to be like I'm not going to be the biggest like woman doing painting miniatures. Like Lila's I think more popular than I am. Like I assume there will be like your channel will probably get bigger. Like it will, of course it will get bigger. Like everyone, all the boats are. But when I started, I was the only one to my knowledge, and I think that helped in some ways because I got a ton of people who were like, "Thank you for just not being a man," because and I found the same thing. Like I enjoy a lot of other Warhammer YouTubers who are men, but I always wish that the presenter was someone I could identify more closely with. Initially, a lot of people would show up my comments and just be like, "Thank you for existing." I didn't want to watch any of these like really masculine personalities. I'm now friends with a lot of those guys, and a lot of them are actually like surprisingly like leftist and progressive. They don't put it on their channel, but a lot of them are really nice guys and were really welcoming to me when I did join that community. They would also acknowledge that like it's good that I'm a part of the community, and it's good that Lila is, and Raquel and you and anyone else I'm forgetting. It's nice to have that variety because it brings more people into the hobby.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's really good, and I think one of the things I'm trying to do with this series is showcase some of those people and just show that actually it's wider and more diverse than people might realize, because there is, I guess, there is an issue with people being bigoted or like anti us being in the hobby, and I think that one of the ways that goes away is just by being more present and showing more voices. Another way is shutting that down and telling them to piss off. But
absolutely, I don't necessarily want to change the Warhammer community, and the way I think of it is like I'm just building my own over here. You can come over if you want. It's more inclusive over here, and I think that's a large part of why I'm no longer. I've taken steps back from like 40K content specifically because I don't really want to be a part of that community. I don't know. It attracts the wrong kind of people sometimes, I feel. Although I don't want to give that space up to the fascists. I want to stand here but I also don't, I sometimes feel that I'm not really a part of the Warhammer or 40K community because I'm on Twitter and I'm on YouTube, but other than that, I don't have a lot of connections to the wider community.
Yeah, I think it's tricky for me as someone who has always been like 40K has always been the thing that I liked to do the most in Warhammer.
Right.
To see and I went to Warhammer World a few weeks ago, and in comparison to 3-4 years ago when I went, the number of women who were there, it was 50 times more.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So pre-pandemic
That's
when I
interesting.
went, I might have been the only one there, or there might have been, I went to a tournament and there was like me, one other woman playing, and none other in the entire Warhammer world other than like working there. Whereas when I was there a few weeks ago, there were, every third or fourth person was either a woman or sort of more feminine presenting, and people commented on it. Like, I think my friend Phil put on Twitter afterwards, he was like, was it just me or were there a ton more women at Warhammer World today? And I don't know if it was a one-off thing. Things clearly are changing.
I agree.
The stuff about female space marines this last couple of weeks, and the bigotry that's come out of that is massive. Like, I had to mute my thread about it because book says something like, only people with male hormones can become a space marine. The contrast, I think, between that visit to Warhammer World, which was a real life thing where I felt welcomed and included, and then this other online world where I just didn't.
Interesting. So you're saying that you felt more included in the physical space than online space?
Yeah, I did. For that one time at Warhammer World,
I would have assumed the opposite was, but this is one of the reasons I never got back into miniatures earlier, was because, like, before I was the YouTuber and people would recognize my face in the game store, I was afraid to go into the game stores because I would get weird looks and I would get people either really trying to talk to me or I would get treated like the girl in the store, right? But that was all, I haven't been to a game store since 2018 probably. I haven't been to a physical game store in a very long time, so maybe that's changed.
Do you have anything else to add on that question about the realities of being a woman in the hobby or the YouTube space?
I could talk about that for like a whole hour. Like I block half the comments because they either over-sexualize me or they don't take me seriously. It's awful being a woman on YouTube, but it's also important, and I've also met like most of my good friends this way. Like,
yeah, I've met so many people doing this, like, since last year, like January or whenever it was, and I decided to like make a go of making some videos and doing more stuff online with my hobby. 500 Twitter followers then, and since then I've like 2,000, which obviously still isn't huge, but it's a lot more. And I met like people who I would consider close friends now, and it's completely wild to me that's happened. You show up at events and be like, hey you, and just talk as if you've been friends for years, which we have been. So yeah, you're right. We can't give that up just because people are mean. But people are really mean.
People are really mean. It's true. So like, for example, because this isn't on my channel, I've taken the opportunity to not cover up this part of my chest. I don't know if you've noticed, but in every one of my videos, I make sure to not show anything below here because I don't want the comments. I try to desexualize myself for the YouTube channel because every time I like slightly show anything, I will get those sexual comments, which I don't want. But it can be tricky. Yeah.
Sure. And I think that other people probably do this as well, but I find myself that it takes me a long time to make any segment of a video that features my face because I'm like redoing it over and over and over again. Like, okay, oh no, I didn't look good then, or oh no, I wanted to do that again, or oh, people will pick up on hair, voice, face, makeup stuff, all that kind of stuff. And I'm sure that everyone else goes through that kind of stuff too, but I'm sure that
mostly women.
I don't have the luxury of being able to just flip the camera open, hit record, talk, hit stop record, and post. Can't do that.
I found as time has gone on and I've become more of a like well-known figure in this community or whatever you want to call it, things have gotten better for me.
Okay.
People treat me nicer because they want to either suck up to me or so I find like I actually don't get as much harassment as I used to get. I think that's just because no one wants to mess with me.
What do you think the future of hobby content online is for yourself or for sort of everyone?
That's a big question. So it's like, on the one hand, I know this is like a pretty stereotypical answer, but if I knew that, I would be rich. But okay, so I would say, in terms of the topic of this podcast, I've only seen the diversity growing. You know, like
Mhm.
everyone, like it used to just exclusively be presumably straight white men, and now like every demographic, like I've been seeing more people of color on, like, with YouTube channels going up, like more women, more LGBT people. Like we've seen the diversity growing as time goes on. So I assume that will just continue to grow. In terms of me in particular, I change my mind about things so often. So I think I'm going to do a lot more like reviews of paint lines, products, things like that, because people seem to find that helpful. Now that I have more space, I'm going to hopefully fill this whole table with a modular city setup that could be like a million videos. I used to pursue strictly my passion. What I've been doing this year, as last year, I did a lot of videos where, well, I discovered sponsorships last year. So I did a lot of sponsored videos because I really needed the money, and because I got some companies I really wanted to work with. But this year, I've changed things up a bit, where I'm doing a lot more painting and like miniatures, modeling, terrain building in my spare time, and then whenever I hit upon something I think is interesting, I'll make a video on that. Not everything I paint even goes on YouTube now. I'm trying to only put the things on YouTube that I think are interesting or valuable.
That's something I found and it's something that I'm trying to work through in my head. Is because
Mhm.
I obviously don't do this as full time. I have a full time job.
Yeah, right.
So my time is really limited, and making videos has kind of become another hobby. And so, what do I spend my hobby time doing? Is it making models, getting better at painting, doing that kind of thing? Or is it
Hmm.
painting things to be in a video? If I don't paint the things I want to paint because I want to paint them, then that will come across in any video that I make.
Yep.
And so
Yeah.
I need to balance that.
The advice that I always give to anyone who wants their YouTube channel to like grow bigger is, don't try to make it a job, and sometimes it will become a job. But if you try to make it a job, it always will fail. That is my, if you try to approach, like I see a lot of like really small YouTube channels who have like professional logos and like posting schedules that are really rigid, and it's like, no, like nobody wants, like, people want that genuine passion, I think. Or if you do it as a hobby, then that's how to grow. It may become a business, but if you set out to become a business, it will usually never happen.
What do you think that the less marginalized people within the space need to do to make the hobby as inclusive as possible?
So I've been asked this before from other larger content creators who do want to be more inclusive. And it's a very hard question, because I feel like if you are less marginalized, you almost can't see. It's like, I feel like people who are less marginalized, like let's take the like archetypal like cis white straight man, right? I feel like they're kind of like in the matrix. And then the further out you get, the more you can see of how the world actually looks. The more marginalized you become, the more you can actually, like, I feel like I didn't really understand how the world worked until I got really poor. Obviously, I'm still like a well off white woman who's, so I'm still a lot less marginalized than a lot of people, but I feel like it's tough. The point is, I think it's tough to give those people advice because they literally can't see the problem. Even if you try to explain it to them, like I said, I'm friends with a lot of or at least acquaintances with a lot of the other Warhammer YouTubers, and it can be hard to explain to them why something is offensive or why something is not very welcoming. They often don't want to hear it, or if they do want to hear it, it's like they just don't.
I guess they can intellectually understand it, or they can listen to
Yeah,
what you're saying and they can be like, oh yeah, I get that. But there's a step between that and actually sort of internalizing what we go through, I guess.
actually, I do have an answer to this question, which is to have more diverse friends. I think that's the answer. Like, I feel like the more different friends I have, like the more friends I have who are different from me on every axis,
Mhm.
the more I understand the world as a whole. So if you are living in a bubble where all of your friends are also straight and white and cis, it's hard to understand the whole tapestry. So in terms of like live events, like let's say like I don't know because I often don't want to go to those events because I know they're not going to be inclusive.
Yeah.
So maybe the answer is we run those things like we run those events ourselves. I find it's more helpful for us to create our own spaces because I never want to ask a faceless corporation to be more considerate of my feelings because it's literally not a person. Like you can't. It's important that we tell that we yell and we get angry when things like the rule book, the misogyny in the rule book recently for Horus Heresy. I think it's important that we're loud about that stuff. At the same time, like Games Workshop's not your dad, right? Games Workshop is a machine. It's not a person. And I feel like relying on large corporations to make things better for us is not going to work. We have to build it ourselves. So I would say that's the answer. I don't know if the people who are on top can make things more accessible for us. I don't know if it's even possible unless I guess hire us to be consultants. That's a good way to do it. I would say that's probably the answer is to hire a more diverse staff.
In your ideal world, what does the future of the hobby as a whole look like? What do you want to see? Game-wise, model-wise, paint-wise, audience-wise? What would you love to see?
Ooh, it's another tough one. As a community, we rely on Games Workshop to do the change for us. So if the question is what would I like to see Games Workshop do, it would be hire more diverse staff, hire sensitivity readers. So just as, I don't know if you've noticed this, but I buy a lot of the codexes just to read. Even if I don't own the army, right?
Okay.
So I've been buying Games Workshop rulebooks and codexes for the past 2 years because I like it. And the spelling and grammar has gotten worse.
Oh.
So I have a theory that like there's spelling mistakes and grammar mistakes in the rulebooks that more and more commonly. So it's my theory that they just don't edit these things. Like why do you like there are not a lot of published rulebooks that just have spelling mistakes every few. It's just a little weird. So the answer to your question is I would like to see more effort go into the rulebooks and more consideration go into the plot lines and storylines that they're emphasizing. Like I was really, I know this is a while ago now, but last year when the Dominion set came out, I was really vocal about like, this is the worst plot line you could pick. Right. So like Dominion, like they could have avoided the way they frame it as a crusade, the way they frame it as being about colonization, the way that they frame it as like you could have had the same storyline, but just use different language. If you might notice that Games Workshop uses the word savage five times on a page, where like a lot of Black and brown people have been saying for years, like stop using the word savage to describe like it's there's certain words that they use that could easily just be avoided. Yeah, so that's why I ideally like I've been trying to support smaller games, smaller companies. I've been really vocal about. I really like Ribbonstone. I think they've corrected a lot of those mistakes. Not all of them. They still use the word savage 5 times. They still have dwarves who still have the anti-Semitic stereotypes that dwarves have had since Tolkien. But with the miniatures community, I feel like we got to take what we can get. There's no game that doesn't have racism, that doesn't have sexism. Every game has a little bit of it, but I feel like it's just up to us to be vocal about the things that we think are problematic in these games and try to do the best we can.
I guess that there is obviously a limit to what we as individuals can do, but
yeah,
I think just keep talking about it and keep doing stuff about it as well, and it will get slowly, hopefully, better or worse, but hopefully better.
It's tough. I do feel optimistic about the future, though. I feel like things have gotten a lot better than they were even like 5 years ago in the miniatures. We didn't used to have female Stormcats, and that was such an obvious that was even in the lore, right? So there's definitely I feel like GW has been getting better, at least in their model range and their artwork, not necessarily in their lore. But the things are slowly getting better, and there are more options. I guess what I want to see is more inclusive companies get more popular.
It'd be really good, like if we see more people able to make their own models, I guess, with 3D printing and all that kind of thing, lowers the barrier of entry for these kinds of things. Although I think you've had experiences with 3D printers which are less than stellar.
There's a reason there's no 3D printer in this new office. It's not worth it for me.
Yeah, but it does substantially lower the costs of, like, you know, starting a miniatures company if you can offer those files for people to make themselves. And that's maybe where we need to start this kind of thing. Thank you so much for coming on to this. I'm sorry we had a few technical issues in there, but your answers to all of the questions have been really insightful, and it's been great to chat to you.
Goodbye. Thanks for having me on.